hello everybody. Welcome. I don't do interviews very often, but welcome to a one-off kind of video where I have the opportunity to interview Yoav Landau of The Living Tombstone. I hope I got your name right. Pronounced right?
Yeah.
Would you want to tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and all that?
So I am been basically in around just loving the interactive computer space since I was very young, and in like basically from around the early 2000s. That's when I was like, oh my god, the internet exists and there's so much cool stuff happening with like internet communities. Everyone's obsessing over internet cultures, and what got me inspired by websites such as Newgrounds to see where can I be part of that space, and because of musicians online who talked about FL Studio, that got me interested in thinking about what should I do when it comes to making songs about things that I love. And that's basically what got me to start with The Living Tombstone and making a lot of songs about different hyperfixations that I care a lot about. Whether this is like a TV show such as like Mother Pony Friendship is Magic, or something like a video game with lots of lore to explore, like Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm internet kid, very much an internet kid.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, yep.
I believe I'm like 10 years younger than you are, but even then, like I was 9 years old, kind of sort of browsing the last of what there was really of the old internet.
Yes.
And sort of like and like because I was making like crappy music like electronic music back in 2012 2013, and just even starting out back then and getting into little communities, I know like the similar feeling. I'm doing this interview today to kind of basically kind of get to know the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 song a little bit better, as much as I'm sure many people are aware of it. If you're good to go, I guess I'll just get right into the questions.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
Cool. Okay, good. First question, it's a bit of a specific one, and I don't know like if you're allowed to say this. So if you're not, I can just completely cut this out.
Oh yeah.
This is incredibly specific, but there was a Silver Gunner rip of Circus from Five Nights at Freddy's, as Silver Gunner tends to do, and it was like B.131, and it's a mashup of the Five Nights at Freddy's your Five Nights at Freddy's 1 song, and Stuck Inside, because like I've gone through the FNAF song music file that you handed to me. So like I'm kind of familiar with it just because I've like tinkered around with it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like I listening to that like Silver Gunner video, I was like, this sounds like oddly correct for what it would sound like if it was like edited in the file. And my girlfriend and I were both wondering, like, was that you who submitted that rip and like actually edited that and sent that in yourself?
Oh, okay.
Or is this?
It's much simpler than that. It was me giving so because I'm really good friends with a lot of people from the crew of Silver Gunner.
All right.
So I have a lot of trust in them, and I even got to meet with them in conventions, and because I know what they tend to do with a lot of the rips that they make, I was comfortable sharing with them a lot of the original tracks for the song, so that way they can like do some rips with them, basically, because I understood like the significance of what it can like be something that they can use to make something, interesting or funny with it, basically, if I was to give it to them. And I usually don't tend to do that. But it's because I really trust these guys and I know, what they're up to, and I love them. So I wanted them to have fun with songs that I made that's part of like internet culture, much like how I see them as part of internet culture and also good friends.
Wow, yeah, that's a really great answer. I honestly didn't expect that. Yeah, no, I mean I love Silver Gunner, so that's just a really interesting thing to hear. Yeah, thank you for that answer.
Yeah, of course. No, so shout out to Siva Gunner. I love him.
Yeah, hell yeah! shout out to Silver Gunner. So yeah, the FNAF 1 song. So that is almost 10 years old now. A bit younger than the series it's based on. So I guess my first real question would be well, not directly connected to FNAF, this first question, but I thought it's related. So the question is basically how does the process of developing like a more original / personal song, I guess, how does that differ from like beginning production on like a fan song? If there is a difference.
Actually, it's very blurred. Like the lines are kind of blurred, because when I work on a song that's, let's say, about something that's like something that, because in the end of the day, these are hyperfixations. These are very much things I very much care about, and I feel like part of caring about something deeply about something like, let's say, Five Nights at Freddy's, is that you do introduce a lot of yourself in what you care about. I mean, so I think for me, when it comes to even doing this song, for example, the Five Nights at Freddy's song, a lot of my connection to what it is about, this idea of the loss of because it is really about just the fact that the children don't really get to have, in some way the entire lives gets cut off, because it's like the second they are now souls in animatronics, and again, like in the way you follow the lore, it's really just about the loss of, like, having that, like the fact that nothing really tends to progress forward for you, I guess. And I felt, weirdly, don't say like weirdly, but it's more like my own personal connection to it is that I grew up a lot, feeling that there's a misunderstanding as a child, to know, like, what is that you're still missing. Because I think the misconception that children don't necessarily understand the world, that doesn't mean that they don't have the right to be part of it, or, to understand what it means. And I think since the first FNAF song is like about that perspective and asking questions and knowing what is happening, and these are all things that I understand and relate to, given my own experience as someone with my own childhood, making it as part of that. And I feel like that's why I was so grateful that, like, this is the approach that I could be taking with making this song, for example, because, making a song that's like personal, or anything that's like I'm doing now, let's say with Sam on the albums that are now existing, is that, I don't think the approach is that different, if that's the case, because a lot of it is really just about having a personal connection to things. And I feel that at times when there was a song that I chose to do about something that's like, very much something that I am excited about. So let's say a good example is like, I made a song about Among Us, and I thought like, oh, that would be really cool to do, because I really like what the game is about. But the problem is that the second you don't find your own, like, thing that's personal to you in, like, the song you're making, it becomes much harder to gravitate and find pieces as to how this can be having like a deeper connection to at least the person making the song, if that makes sense. Because that's, I think, like the big approach for me, is that it tends to be very much similar in a lot of ways, and tends to work less when you don't know how to find that connection with yourself in it, because it's still, that's still the aspect of being a fan, is that everyone's a fan in their own way on how they like the things that they care about. And Five Nights at Freddy's is a very good example of people having so much sentiment to what it's about. I mean, a lot of people grew up with Chuck E. Cheese, so it's like you have your own personal connection to, being a kid in Chuck E. Cheese, for example. So that's at least the thought process that I would go through when it comes to making these things. And as someone who I tend to overthink and also over-explain things a lot, and that's because of my own neurodivergency, and I think the fact that there's stuff for me to really know how to encapsulate and understand what it means in specific ways allows me to relate to it in such a way that doesn't let me scatterbrained on where it is. So there's a lot of value to fandom songs in that regard, is that it leaves me very contained, is that I'm not, I know what to focus on, but I'm not like all over the place on where I need to go.
Yeah, no, that was actually really great hearing you say that, because I'm also neurodivergent, and I really agree with everything you said right there. And yeah, I think the way I asked that question was I could have asked it a bit better, I think.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Yeah, I mean just like, yeah, like because of course there are gonna be like surface level differences between like an original song versus like a property people are already familiar with, but like I really do see how it's like they do have to be personal. I feel like any art that you make really it is somewhat personal in every way, whether you try to have it be that or not.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. That was a really great answer. So yeah. I mean, I guess in that regards, what was it that like originally drew you to fnaf then, if anything like specific?
I think it was the aesthetic of the visuals in the beginning. Like, okay, so I think it was very smart to make character designs that you can immediately see and be like, okay, I can tell that these are all different characters. Like more than just that, I can very quickly gauge what it's about based on just looking at it. And I remember this is the kind of reaction I had when fnaf came out first. Like the fact that when I saw the visuals for the game, that reminded me of games that I used to play back then, that are very much in that kind of like basic, like a very like fundamental shapes, very
like CD-ROM games kind of.
Yeah, it has this vibe of a CD-ROM game. And I and growing up with this stuff, I'm so surprised that someone can just nail it again, because it seems to be kind of a forgotten aesthetic, and the fact that with all of this being thought out that way, the gameplay idea behind it is interesting. Like the fact that the jump scare happens when you die in the game is really interesting to me. And I think seeing those things happen, like I was interested in knowing more about it. But the fact that there was like a conversation around it was the fascinating thing for me. Also, is to see people in message boards like. For example, I remember like on Tumblr, like people like mentioning that there's something going on in the background of this game, and that like gives you more context as to why this is so scary. And I think like the want to understand it more led me to understand that like there's something really cool going on there. And I took the experience that I had from like being in a fandom such as Malte Pony, and understanding how, there's something interesting that I could do similarly here, where it's like I can, look into what the world building provides me as like building material to come up with something that could, encapsulate it as a song, basically. So there's a lot of like, oh, I'm familiar because it's a fandom that I get to see it grow from the beginning. But also, this also reminds me of something I grew up with. This is cool.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. I think you're definitely right about the idea of it being like it does look like it does look like kind of a late 90s like CD-ROM thing or whatever. And I think it's really interesting that Scott Cawthon, like he was learning like how to 3D model and stuff like in the 90s and really early 2000s, and so like his style is naturally that kind of sort of janky early 2000s style. So I've always thought that like somebody from that background making a game like Five Nights at Freddy's that is like like takes that art style and makes it creepy. I think it's really interesting too. So no, I totally understand that.
Like, good on him for leaning into it. It's
yeah.
I mean, the fact that he had conviction and say, all right, let's go with this, is already a big decision as an artist to just decide that this is what can work for your game. And I'm happy that he, made it the way it is, because it's hard to capture that in something like this.
Yeah, and it's funny because people are like, oh well, FNAF should just be scary like this, and people complain about the more lighthearted stuff, but like the lighthearted stuff is it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same art style, just taken in a less threatening light. So it's it all kind of comes full circle. Oh, sorry, voice crack. But okay. So so I wanted to move on to talking about like the project file itself and like the song itself.
Yes.
Breaking it down. So yeah, I like you sent me the FLP and I've looked through it, and I've just like I've isolated different instruments, and I've kind of taken a much sort of closer look at different aspects, because I think it's so like genuinely very very fascinating to look at, and it's made me curious about like some of the decisions you made when you used like specific instruments, because you have stuff like 8-bit synths, like there's the TB Peach plugin in there, and
yep.
and there's there's electronic synths, and there's like string and brass, and that's got that sort of more haunted like gothic kind of feeling. So I wanted to ask, like, what was like your goal kind of for the sound of this instrumental, basically?
I think it was clear that this was gonna go for something like almost like a horror story kind of vibe to it, which is why I picked a lot of like orchestral instruments, because I knew that this would, it's a couple of different tangents. It's like one of them is the tune in the beginning, which is a reference to what the tune like, now I'm blanking on what's it called.
Torio match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the what's it called again? Just so I don't like
the Toreador March.
Toreador, yeah.
Yeah.
Toreador March is like a classical. So it's because it's a classical piece. I thought as an extension of it being a classical piece, I should use classical instruments, and it being classical instruments really worked into it sounding like a song that's like about a horror story. And I think having all the electronic instruments alongside it was both kind of, I mean, I'll be frank and say that there is some idea of being convenient, because by that point I was making a lot of electronic music. So it's like, oh, obviously, I mean, I do a lot of electronic music. It's all the instruments that I'm very much aware of. And by that point, TB Pitch, the synth you mentioned, like was something I was using a lot at the time. I stopped using it because it doesn't work on Mac for some reason. But basically, it was also the idea that this seems in my head to fit like all the themes that Five Nights at Freddy's were about for me. And I think the marriage of the two, like classical and electronic instruments, like, as a song that felt right to make. I mean, a lot of the decision making in the song is more like, does this feel right to do? And it's like I said yes to basically everything that seemed like it made sense for making it this way. A lot of it is very, you saw it in the project file. There's like, especially in the pick chorus, it's like very, like so many instruments playing at the same time that at this point it's kind of hard to gauge what is playing, because they're all coming at you all at once. I I mean, I think in those cases it was more like it just sounded good, but I definitely at the time was not realizing how much some instruments were being drowned out by other instruments, because it just it mattered to me that there was a big full package of whatever it is, and if some instruments tend to be a little bit quieter than they're supposed to, or fall a little bit too much into the background, then I'm like, all right, then then it's whatever the project file seems to make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. No, I totally understand that. Honestly, I do like how sort of I'm trying to think of the technical word, like when the mix is like when it's like thick, I guess.
Yes.
I like that when it's like very punchy and like kind of you know you like you know what I'm talking about. I do like that. And I really do think the instrument choices complement a lot of, you know, the game's themes and stuff. And yeah, I think it's also interesting actually, with the FNAF movie, the opening theme to the FNAF movie, when there's the song playing in the opening credits.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also really like that theme, and it was interesting to go back and because I've been working on a remix of it, so I've been like analyzing it, and it's interesting to see that like it shares pretty much all the same fundamental kind of like the orchestrals, and then like the 8-bit stuff, and like the electronic synths. I found it interesting that it shares kind of a lot of that with your song. So I guess, yeah. So I guess it just that's a testament to kind of how strong the kind of, you know, the main ingredients of FNAF are, really, that you could just translate them that easy into music and have it sound really good.
It's also unique. I mean, by that point, it's not like this is the first time of like the idea of like horror on computers is like not been done before. I mean, they've been done so many times in different ways, but because this is such a unique approach to, because you mentioned the intro music to the song, to the movie, with the kids like choir as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of elements in that intro music that like you can tell these are all the elements of what makes Final Fantasy Freddy's unique as a concept, because it's also it goes back to it being not just animatronics, but animatronics for the purpose of it being for kids, basically. And how can you turn it into something that's like sinister and scary, and then suddenly it becomes like an interesting theme of its own. I love it. It's really cool.
What was the idea behind writing like the lyrics to the song, I guess? Because like with later entries, like the FNAF 2, 3 onwards, songs that you made, like obviously they're a lot more story oriented, and they pull from specific, you know, parts of that. So what was it about FNAF 1 that you kind of wrote differently to those songs, I guess?
I think it was really easy to pick a point of view and run with it, because that's kind of the lyric idea behind this thing. It's like the very first line is like, "We're waiting every night." And that's really just about trying to see if there's a way to illustrate or paint the character from a different POV. I mean, the purpose was always to say, all right, if it's going to be a song and it's going to be about this game, you know, the last thing people want to hear is what they already understood or got from the game, which is that you get the point of view of the guy who's working there. So I thought something is a way to explore and at least make it interesting for the person listening, and also for myself as someone who gets to create it, is to figure out a point of view that you don't get to question enough, which is why the kids become the focal point in that sense, the animatronics, I mean, where it's like you talk from their perspective and see if there's interesting things that you could say as a way to make the listener go and ask it themselves if there's something to ask about the story of the games from that angle. And that's why a lot of the lyrics are very much descriptive, very much what do I think, what do I feel as this character or characters in this case. And and run with it. Hence why, like, you know, later in the song, it's like the question of like, why are you why? I mean, as if it's asking the player, it's like, why are you the one opening the doors? Why are you the one doing all these things? It's like, I don't really have the answer as an artist, but I have a lot of, you know, observations and assumptions as to why this could be, but I leave it open enough so, you know, this becomes something for listeners to be intrigued and maybe figure out more about this for themselves, or, you know, be in the same wavelength as I am and see if there's something to ask about it. And over time with the other songs, it's a very similar approach, really, but it also becomes like a personal thing, because I feel like the harder it is to, you know, complete the missing pieces, because there's more and more and more story that are filled in by, you know, the people who write the stories for the games, like Scott, that now it becomes like, okay, where can I fit in interesting questions from maybe the way I observe it and connect with it from my own personal experience, and maybe as a way to see if there's an interesting thing to ask from a human place, because I think that's where I come about a lot with these, is that it's really easy to put characters in a scenario, which is what happens a lot in these games, but it's less common, especially in the Final Fantasy games, to feel like those characters can have like their own personal grievances and ideas of why they feel this way about something. I mean, it does kind of happen later in Security Breach with Glamrock Freddy, but but overall, like it's very it tends to sometimes be very like, you know, this character did this and now he does that and now he does this and now he does that, but not enough, you know, the philosophical or you know, psychological like reasoning behind this stuff.
Yeah, I have to agree. I honestly I really don't think I've ever seen a lot of FNAF a lot of FNAF songs cover that, because it's usually, if it is from the perspective of the animatronics, it's kind of like it's not really it's not really like from the ghost inside the animatronic. It's more just this kind of generic sort of like evil kind of, you know, caricature that people write from the point of view of, when really there is more to it. And I think it's really interesting that because that's not something I've really actively thought about, but it is from the, like, you know, from the perspective of these lost souls, and I think it's a really interesting idea that you went for that, because I still haven't really seen it. A lot of songs talk about that, so yeah, props for doing it first, I guess.
No, yeah, I mean, and I'm glad that this opened up a lot of people to try that approach, because I feel like this because the why is obvious, like we know what why and what happens, but I think it's kind of like, you know, just because you have to, let's say, stupid example, like take the bus in the morning to get to work kind of thing, you know, you still in your head would ask questions of like, okay, so is this my life? I'm taking the bus to go to work kind of thing. It's like you start to ask the most psychological things about the way you're in this situation, you're in this scenario, and you cannot just be, you know, just a thing that does a thing because you're in this scenario, or you're not a robot. You know, that's maybe the irony of it all, is that despite these songs being about animatronics, like I treat them very much like humans, because in the end of the day, that's what we perceive them as such. Like we see them as like fully, you know, possible of thought, characters.
This is kind of a last minute question I wrote in, but I was watching PAX East panel from 2023. Where you and Sam Haft were showcasing like the old Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2 like demos and stuff, and the early instrumentals and all of that, and the FNAF 2 demos. You kind of experimented with the drums a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, did the FNAF 1 song have anything like that, or was it just kind of the one demo? And then it kind of morphed into what it is now, because I recall you saying that like you made that song kind of quickly somewhere or something.
Yeah, okay. There's a bit of a story to it. So Back in, it was a Brony convention. It was in the UK, in Manchester. There's a convention called Buck, BUCK, and that was happening, I think, in 2014. And I remember, before 2014, like I was already like in the way that I make songs a lot. I mean, I'm very much melodies first and then lyrics, and I was sketching on my phone. Like basically, I opened voice memo app on my phone and just recorded ideas, like in different times. And I later, when I was thinking in the convention, like, hey, maybe I should do a Final Fantasy Freddy song. That would be really cool. And I opened FL Studio to kind of like grab all these different like voice memo sketches, ideas to see if there's something like a song structure going on with no lyrics yet. And at the time, like the only meaningful difference is that it didn't, like, it was supposed to start with the ta, 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 ta. It was supposed to start with that, but instead I decided to start with the Theodore March instead, and then the verse, and also change the key of the song because it felt like the key of the song that it was originally and didn't fit what it was supposed to be, but it was almost very much intact. In fact, it was I was actually using a lot of the same instruments and synths and stuff from working on the Road to El Dorado remix, because I did that before.
Okay. I was I was actually wondering about that because I listened to that and I was like, these are pretty similar sounding. I wonder if the melodies were carried over or something like that.
I basically just used the same instruments for the most part. So I used the same drums and the same synths for the Road to El Dorado. You can actually hear the same guitar bass tone in both, and also the drums. It's basically the same drums, and that the only thing that's different in the FNAF song is that it has orchestral elements added to it after the fact.
Oh, right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I was wondering about that for a long time. Yeah, cool.
It's like the Road to El Dorado remix is basically FNAF 0 song.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess about the FNAF songs like impact, because it's kind of become kind of a long running meme at this point that it's it's in like a sports stadium and it's played on buses and you just hear it in all these random places that people tweet out about. What's your how do you feel about all of that? It must be very interesting having people tag you in just the most random places for this song to just play.
I think it's more that I am happy that with how I am in terms of like I mentioned earlier, like being a neurodivergent, it's like I always love making music and I always intend the stuff to make to mean a lot to other people and to get to people who I feel like would share that sentiment on something that I care about a lot, such as Final Fantasy Freddy's, and to see it be bigger than what I expected, because I did not know that this was that again, it's not just a song, it's the fact that Final Fantasy Freddy's it resonates with so many people, and the fact that so many people can contextualize the care for what this is, whether they know it directly or indirectly, because, for example, not everyone cares about Final Fantasy Freddy's, but they know the memes that spawn out of it. And somehow this becomes something that people can, quote and say. And I think over time, I more care about the stuff that I make to be important. And as someone who made the song or songs, it's like being recognized for them or being known for them is something that over time I realized, like, I just really like the empathic connection that I can have with people. So in the end of the day, I care a lot about the friends that are in my life and my family, and the fact that I can still have that. So again, like, even when the way I answer this question is because I am so scatterbrained in the way I am as a neurodivergent person. I very much just am grateful that people really can be like me and care a lot about something like this and show it to everyone, and also be part of the pop culture zeitgeist in a sense.
Yeah.
is really really cool. But yeah, I think over time I just really enjoyed the space I have, exploring these things in my own private time to make something cool like this again. And that the fact that the work that I've done has become really synonymous with something as big as Five Nights at Freddy's. It's crazy. Well, it's not necessarily crazy. It's more that I'm grateful that it's happened, and it's crazy that it's been such a lucky circumstance, because it's usually doesn't happen this way. And I'm happy I was there when I knew what I wanted to do, and that people were really grateful for it. So
Yeah, I think that's a really really noble motivation for wanting to make music and stuff, to bring people together and all that. I really like that. I know you said it a bit earlier, but yeah, I know how to relate to the scatterbrained feeling. I get that all the time.
hmm I tried really hard with, like, in the past, especially with making music, to see, because it's like I said, because it's hard for me to sometimes articulate or form cohesive, like, things to say without going too far into tangents, is that I thought, all right, I'm a musician, and since music is a form of language, would that be a way for people to connect with me and understand who I am better? And I think over time I realized that while people really connect with you, and hence, case in point, this happened with the Five Nights at Freddy's song for a lot of people. In the end of the day, that doesn't inherently mean that people will understand you, and that's okay. I think, like, what I'm saying is, I'm happy that there's a form of speaking to people through music that makes people really be able to connect on some level. But I think for that reason, I'm, like, just grateful that there's this ability for me to do that, but not have to feel bad that the other part of me that tries to communicate, like, through just speaking about it, that doesn't have to necessarily have to self-punish, that it doesn't have to come out as, like, articulate in complete ways.
Yeah, that's something I've always attempted to do. I just don't I juggle so many different, because like I make videos and I do like a lot of different things, so it's hard for me to sink my time into music as much as I used to be able to, which really sucks, because I would like to get better at it. But yeah, no, I really like the idea of like articulating yourself through music, and I think that's a perfectly valid and really creative thing to sort of do, and that's something I definitely like to do whenever I have the time again. But that's a really cool answer. Okay, so I'm wondering, like, so I like the song has obviously had a lot of reach, and I'm wondering, like, I'm wondering, like, has in any way, has, like, did like the sudden kind of success of your channel at the time, did you kind of look at how the FNAF song like performed and kind of applied anything to future songs or anything like that, or like is there anything kind of from that whole experience that you've kind of learned as an artist?
Yes. Oh my God. So let me tell you something. I, at the time, because my parents, they were definitely observed my, channel, and how the living Tombstone, even at the time, was getting, popular. I mean, before the Five Nights at Freddy's song, there was the remix of Discord that I've done of Jess's song, Odyssey or Beat. Shout out to Odyssey or Beat. Hope you're doing well. And there was something there happening, but my parents were like, well, you should go study, you should get like a degree in something. And I knew at the time that it would mean me having to juggle those two things. So it was basically deciding, like, okay, because it was, at the time, it was right at the cusp of, like, the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic fandom. Like, there were friends that were there with me on the fandom, and then I saw that over time more and more people started to kind of like deviate from it, and I wasn't sure if I was in the same fandom that I was there when I first joined, and I thought like, because it's really hard to be successful with music. So I thought at the time like, all right, if I don't really know where this is going with the Living Tombstone, maybe I should focus on studying instead. And the fact that the first fnaf song did well and it actually reached out to people, I think that definitely made me focus on pivoting to just being a musician, basically, because I wasn't expecting that this was something that's going to lead me to a career. I mean, I just really enjoyed what I was making, and I was grateful that, like we talked earlier about the neurodivergency of it all, like, I needed an outlet to express myself somehow that doesn't feel like I am too all over the place. And the fact that music even enabled me to do that, it made me very grateful. But the fact that it was even a career it led to what you're asking, is that I feel like over time, I realized that there's a lot of power in being able to do it well. But at the same time, it's kind of like you're building your own foundation on what your life is around, because it's not the same when it's a hobby versus if it's work kind of thing. And since it becomes actual work, then it becomes like now I still start to really care about the place that I'm inhabiting with other people, with fans and listeners, and I think again, the irony of it all with this one is that being neurodivergent makes it hard for me to sometimes understand what other people try to convey. It's not just myself. So to work as an artist and try to communicate with people verbally, and then it's like, oh, make a song. It's like, I don't know if I understand. I'm sorry. So that's kind of like been what it is for me, is that I am navigating through the world through the lens of someone, through my brain, the way I process everything, loving what I do. But then because it's become so much of a focus, it becomes much harder to know how this lens with other people in your life, kind of like understanding what is that needs to be done. And it was already like a long time struggle for me even now to understand and be understood. But that's why you try to win in your own little ways, like just to say, well, I can make music, and hopefully with those times that I can get to be understood to that level, I can make something cool. And I'm glad that people appreciate it a lot. But there's pressure in making it good all the time, because that's something that you make it your life, basically. It's complicated. I guess it's complicated because I mean, like I said, I started from just being a fan of the internet as a whole and making things for fun and wanting this to be a fun thing. And then the second it becomes work, it becomes like an important work into figuring out how do you operate as a creative while this is your job, kind of thing. Do you clock in? Do you clock out when you're not like at work or in front of a computer making music? Does that mean you're still working, like, because you're taking stuff in? There's a lot of like, it's not to make the answer too long, but it's still something I'm still figuring out.
And I 100% agree, because I'm obviously I'm not in the exact same situation you are, but I'm someone who, like, also to a degree gets to kind of express myself through the videos I make, because I'm pretty much a full-time YouTuber. And I totally relate to that. It's the thing of it's kind of the double-edged sword of like, you get to do this all the time versus you have to do this all the time in a way. So you have to really balance it. Or for me at least. I don't know exactly how much that relates, but there's always going to be struggles to it if it's a creative job. But I don't know. I guess
because it's hard to separate. It's not as like clear cut as like you are creative when you're not working, and when you're working, you're doing it very like by the book kind of thing. But there's no by the book in creative work. It's all over the place. It's the fact that you don't stop working even when you're not working.
I get that. I believe I only have one question left.
If
that's all right.
Yes.
So I know the last time that the last time we talked, I asked I think the last question I asked was, is there anything you would do to change the FNAF 1 song? And I'm pretty sure I remember you just saying you would wanna remaster it pretty much. So and then because we did that interview in September, and then in October I go to the FNAF movie, and in the end credits that is the FNAF song remastered.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering about all of that. So like, had you already made the remastered video or the remastered version of that song, but before I asked about it?
It was in the works. Basically, what happened was at the time when we talked about it, it's like there was the ongoing process. Actually, no, it's kind of happened before, but because it was the movie didn't come out, and I didn't want to step on the toes of the people who worked on the movie. So It's like by the time it came out, it's like I can tell you now, it's like there was work on a remastered version, and which exists, and it's in Apple Music, so you can listen to it in Adobe Atmos, which is cool. Ara Atkins did amazing in making that version exist. And in the movie itself, they use if I'm correct, I think they used the remastered version, but I think they just used the version of the song that was already out there for the longest time, which is the YouTube version.
Right.
Because I think in the end of the day, they just knew it works and people know what this is. And for a credit song, it was more than enough for what they needed. But, both versions exist now.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
So, yeah, yes.
So I guess as kind of as a follow-up to that question, like, so what was kind of the process of you being contacted for this song to be put into the movie? Because I believe you said it was 2018.
Yes.
The process began.
In 2018, Scott emailed me being like, "Hey, so I'm working on the movie version of the game, and it would be really cool if we can license your song to be put in the movie." And I think I remember saying yes, but then basically there was a lot of waiting time because he was still working on the movie. It was still pre-production, and this process takes a long time. So basically, it was a case of just waiting for seeing where it's gonna end up being at, because at the time I think it was still working on with a different studio, and it was not yet the version that they ended up settling on now. So from 2018 until 2023, it was basically just waiting for the movie to get made. And by that point, that was a long time secret that I had to keep from a lot of people, because the second it goes out, it would torpedo the chances that it could have been in the movie. And I wanted to be on good terms with Scott and the people who worked on the movie.
Yeah.
So that was me just being very patient until the movie came out. And now it did. And now it's I'm very happy that something got created as a fan, literally a week after the game came out. And now this is part of the culture of the games and also the movie, and the fact that it's in the movie is kind of crazy. So it's a nice full circle moment for me.
Yeah, definitely. I really think if the movie does a good job at one thing, it's celebrating the fans and the fan community, because there's the Sparky the dog animatronic that was based on the hoax. That was going around, and all this other stuff. And all the YouTuber cameos and everything. It's I really think it's deserved, because that song really has impacted so many people. That's every question I have. So yeah, we got through it. So I guess, is there anything you want to promote or talk about or link to, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to first of all discuss and give a shout out to Sam. I'm happy that with him I get to take the Living Tombstone to a new, because after a long time of like, you know, really loving doing stuff in different fandom spaces, especially Five Nights at Freddy's, because that one really helped me explore, you know, how as a creative I can like write songs from different subjects and ideas and see if this translates to people who are very much like me, obsessed with it. And then with Sam, a lot of the work is to come up with our own stories and ideas based on characters that we came up with. So the fact that we get to do it with the album that already came out, like 01, and now there's a new album coming out that's obviously Rust. I mean, everyone knows what the next album's going to be, but I'm very excited for the songs coming out from that. So I love Sam. The stuff we do together has been really, really fun. And I'm excited for what's coming. And this year there's going to be a tour in the North American side of the world. So stay tuned for the songs and for that. And there's still more songs coming on the Living Tombstone. I just don't want to make, you know, immediate promises because there's still stuff in progress. And I also want to promote, so there's a side project that I'm right now in this year planning to release songs of called Sugar Vision. And the aim for that project is to explore a different side of something from, you know, trying to make a more personal statement on growing up and nostalgia and what does it mean to, you know, pick things that you're happy to share as like an artist or as yourself, but also explain the interesting juxtaposition of it being happy, but also having very aggressive sounding like, you know, beats to it, like very heavy electronic music, because the idea is to juxtapose happy with, you know, dealing with, you know, self actualization through that. And I wanted to see if there's an interesting thing to do with it, and very happy visuals, very happy, cool stuff. So I hope that this comes, and I hope people will enjoy it. And thank you so much. I love your channel. I love the video essays you've done, and I'm very happy to have done the interview with you. I'm excited for this video that's going to be featuring the voice that I'm, you know, saying through. I'm so meta.
Yeah.
No, but this is exciting. So thank you so much for having me do the interview. And I think this time we don't have technical difficulties because the recording did not stop or do silly things. So I'm happy.
Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure. I mean, like I said in the last one, I was listening to your stuff since like the Astor movie and Eddsworld days. Like, it's been really cool being able to kind of have sit down and have a conversation.
Yes, I'm so happy we've done this. So thank you again for the interview.
Yeah, of course. It's been really, really great.